Welcome to One Man's Tracks, the secondhand music channel. The place where I discover music through abandoned albums. I do my best to connect some threads, but mostly I'm just here to rave about the artists behind the music. Today's artists have not only come together here to create a truly unbelievable record, but have also individually contributed to so many definitive works of the 80s and 90s Seattle music scene. Mad Season's legendary collective sparked out of a meeting between Pearl Jam's guitarist Mike McCready and the Walkabout's bassist John Baker Saunders while they were going to rehab in Minnesota in 1994. Upon returning to Seattle, they would rehearse with Screaming Trees drummer Barrett Martin and would add in frontman of Alice in Chains Lane Staley to the mix, booking some shows pretty much immediately. They'd briefly be known as the Gacy Bunch, and during those shows they would spontaneously craft new songs and gain the confidence to just jump right into the studio to record an entire album after just a pair of rehearsals and I think 4 shows. From there, it only took the band a week at Bad Animal Studios to lay down the tracks, and Staley only a few more days after that to write and record the lyrics for this. Their first and only studio record, produced by Brett Eliason, released on March 14th of 1995 through Columbia Records. Here's Mad Seasons Above. It's amazing how thoughtful it is, even with its spur-of-the-moment creation. The chemistry and the confidence that this group had during their short stint was unreal. The way they effortlessly combined classic with heavier and alternative rock and jazz and blues with their already distinct local grunge aesthetic, along with this album's psychedelic, hazy production style, Mad Season created a truly timeless LP with Above here in basically no time at all. The elements that each individual musician brings to this outfit combine in a special way, crafting this atmospheric rock blend that enables each individual's talents to truly shine while still retaining this consistent, cohesive musical unity throughout. The mix is a real member of this band, with it doing so well to spotlight everybody while still bringing it all together to have this one coherent sound and style. It's this sound that is straining for a freedom. It's really emotive. It might just be the byproduct of those many years of disheartened addiction that the scene of that time seemed to just perpetuate. And I haven't even got to mention Screaming Trees frontman Mark Lanigan's contributions as guest vocalist on here, and I promise I will in just a minute when I go over these tracks. There's just something about this that does such a phenomenal job at not only encapsulating a time and a space, but also it has this deeper understanding of the persistent human struggle that is addiction. And really the ultimate tragedy of this project is the sheer amount of premature death that is associated with it, and mostly due to that struggle that they seem to understand so well. It really is such a shame, and I'm sorry for dampening the mood, but I do think that this context enhances the gravity and highlights the importance of this work. It is a truly dark and powerful piece of art whose depth allows for lasting connection and whose message brings a much needed awareness to a struggle we tend to just sweep under the rug. It's a moving, rockin' triumph with an amazingly captivating ambiance. Let's get now into the muck of Mad Season and take a trip through Above's track list. Starting with the atmospheric haze of this inviting, entrancing opening cut, Wake Up. This sobering 7.5-minute song rises, falls, and rises again, breaking free with this project's first ripping McCready solo, but then seemingly mirroring a relapse, it returns once again back to the beginning to sort of redo this cycle. It's incredibly well performed. The vocals are so chilling and just haunting and grab you and hold you captive for the entire thing. Another progressive epic, X-Ray Mind, comes barreling in on the back of some more stellar rhythm section performances and a memorable guitar riff. Lane weaves a narrative about all the pitfalls of fame, while Mike just wails this wicked number to its satisfying conclusion. Continuing down the winding and unforgiving path of addiction, we get to this stripped back track called River of Deceit, whose opening line kind of bottles that sentiment perfectly. My pain is self-chosen. At least so the prophet says, and the prophet is a reference to this book of poems that Lane was particularly fond of. And it's a little odd, but the verse that line is taken from seems to suggest or even recommend that he continue to partake in that poison that seemingly heals his sick mind. It's definitely still up for interpretation. It's poetry, so I would really love to hear what your thoughts on self-chosen pain are down in the comments. I think at its core, this song is about ego loss and how letting go can be a beautiful and freeing thing. It thematically plays really well into the following title track above, that one being all about forgiveness and finding peace even in moments where you're repeatedly deceived or mistreated. It is either that, or perhaps it's this projection of that sort of holier than thou false superiority that some people get when they get high. It's Mark Lanigan's first guest appearance, and tonally it's much heavier. It comes in slow, but when these rockin' choruses hit, it kicks right into gear, and both vocalists come together magnificently. Artificial Red is one of the songs that the band dreamt up on the spot while they were playing one of their first live gigs. It's got this swaying southern blues tempo that rolls the rockin' waves of this smoky number along effortlessly. I could understand this being lumped in with the movement at the time, but it seems the further we get from the grunge era, the less grungy certain albums seem to sound. Like, take for instance the following track, Lifeless Dead, that I'd classify more as this booming, ominous, gothic rock number. It rides in and out on some more excellent McCready riffage and has some more excellent Staley incantations. What even is grunge, really, though? Is it more of an energy, of a vibe, rather than a style? I guess if that's the case, then the following track is more or less one that I might call grunge rather than the heavy metal it was probably classified as at the time. It's a Mad Season classic. It's brilliant in its honest simplicity and gruff delivery. It's, I don't know anything, and there's not really much more to be said about this track other than it hits hard and it fucking rocks. On to the second Lanigan appearance. It's the beautifully layered, multi-instrumental, experimental Long Gone Day. They widen the record right up at the end here with this additional percussion that gets me going right in my hips, and the jazzy sax solo slipped in there as well. It's a wonderfully collaborative cut that's light and easygoing, but if you look into the lyrics, the tone is much more morose, and it gives the whole song this sort of haunted, reflective atmosphere that creeps up and kind of grows on you with each listen. We're then treated to a jammy instrumental titled November Hotel. It's a grandiose rock epic that takes its time for the first couple of minutes and then erupts with this wall of rock and roll vengeance, hitting you with about 5 minutes of heavy, winding, psychedelic vibrations. After that, we get to cool off for the final couple of minutes on this spacious and droning reminder that we're all alone. Just ending about as frankly as it started off. Mad Seasons Above teaches us that while life can be incredibly trying, some beautiful and brilliant things often come out of dark, dark places. One of the most spontaneous and short-lived supergroups, Mad Season was free and raw and managed to capture this excellently cohesive project that brought out the very best out of all of its members. It's so terribly unfortunate that the thing that brought this group together was ultimately what led to its messy and tragic undoing. I suppose I ought to mention the deluxe reissued edition of Above that came out with a few extra songs that the band recorded with Mark Lanigan writing and singing on them. They're called Locomotive, Black Book of Fear, and Slip Away, and they come in after this plucky little acoustic interlude. I think they're all pretty great songs on their own, but they just don't quite fit without Lane singing on them. They're just not quite a Mad Season feeling song. Don't get me wrong, I think Locomotive is really excellent and all of the songs are really well written. It's just not really quite clicking with the same amount of just emphasis that Lane brought to it. There is this retrospective eeriness that especially a song like Slip Away has that, ooh, if you really think about it too long, it can overwhelm you a bit. So I'm sure that track and Black Book will grow on me more and more as all this Mad Season material seems to. I just wish there was a little more of it out there. I believe they tried to get into the studio and record a second album, but couldn't get Lane to come in, and so unfortunately this is all you get besides a killer live album and this orchestral accompanied sort of tribute concert they did with Chris Cornell as a singer back in 2015. Those are linked down in the description along with this and the deluxe songs. These guys were associated with a ton of other great work, so if you haven't already, get into their individual stuff and all the bands they were associated and those litany of other things that these guys have made. It's awesome. It's a pretty long list, so leave me a comment of maybe one of your favorites or just a fun little Mad Season tidbit. I appreciate you all for making it this far in the video. Like it, maybe subscribe for another dose of throwback music nostalgia. I come back every couple of weeks with a fun thing I found at the thrift shop, so if you're interested, come along. Here's a couple I've found maybe recently, maybe a couple of years ago. I'm at it for at least 10 long years. It's an addiction, and this collection's just gonna grow until it's completely unmanageable and swallows me whole. I'll see you all later. Take good care.